Josh, you want me to read the whole thing? We're not doing some kind of, we're not doing a...
No, sure. Yeah, you got a hold.
Okay.
Yeah. That's okay?
Yeah, it's great.
All right, thank you.
Next one you get, Cheryl. I feel bad now.
Hey, man, that's the least of our worries.
I thought you were getting the telecommunication one. I was
That's
like,
the
oh.
least of our worries. Don't worry about it.
Alright, we're officially live.
It's fine. Way too quiet.
Need to have music playing in the background or something.
Patriotic, maybe?
Just something.
I know we'll break it up.
With 4 kids, are you kidding me? Oh, well, and I've got one that loves to screech.
I will now call to order our regular scheduled Apex Town Council meeting for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. And I would like to welcome those who have joined us live stream. And Mayor Pro Tem Nicole Dozier is attending virtually. I want to make that known on record. I want to go now to an invocation to start our meeting. And what I thought we would do tonight is do something a little bit different. As I know, there's been a lot that has gone on in the past week. A lot of, incidents. I really feel like the enemy tries to come in and divide our community. So sometimes it's just good to just take a moment of silence and just tune out all the noise and just think about what this community means to us and how we need to bring everybody together in unity. So if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. We do have 3 presentations tonight, and we're going to share in those presentations. I'll start the first one off, and this is a presentation of National Police Week Proclamation. It gives me great honor, obviously, to do this. I think before I became mayor, I served in an agency that I believe is one of the best agencies in America, the Apex Police Department. And I've been proud to have served there and helped build that agency to what it is today. So it is my honor to read this proclamation. National Police Week 2020. Whereas Congress and the President of the United States has designated May 15th, 2020 as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as National Police Week. And whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Apex Police Department. And whereas the members of our law enforcement agency of Apex play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of our town. And whereas it is important for all citizens to know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 32nd Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2020. Now, therefore, I, Jacques K. Gilbert, Mayor of the town of Apex, North Carolina, call upon our citizens and all patriotic civic and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10th through the 16th, 2020 as National Police Week, recognizing all law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities. I further call upon all citizens to observe May 15th, 2020 as Peace Officers Memorial Day to honor our law enforcement officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have been disabled in the performance of their duties, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. And it's my honor to sign this proclamation tonight. And Chief, let me again pass on my gratitude, and my heart and my prayers will continue to be with the police officers and the telecommunicators who faithfully serve our community. Thank you. All right, we now move on to presentation number 2, proclamation recognizing May the 3rd through the 9th as Public Service Recognition Week. And we're honored tonight to have our Councilman Brett Gant to read that proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. As a federal employee, it's my honor to read this proclamation for Public Service Recognition Week 2020. Whereas our residents are served every day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and municipal levels, and whereas nearly 500 hardworking, talented people are employed by the town of Apex with over 3,600 combined years of government service, and whereas in often difficult circumstances, our civil servants work to protect and improve the quality of life for our residents, businesses, and visitors, and whereas Public Service Recognition Week has been celebrated the first week of May since 1985 to honor the men and women who serve our nation as federal, state, county, and local government employees. Now, therefore, our Mayor, Jacques K. Gilbert, Mayor of the town of Apex, North Carolina, call upon our citizens and all patriotic, civic, educational organizations to observe the week of May 3rd through 9th, 2020 as Public Service Recognition Week, recognizing all public servants, past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to their communities. And then, I guess the witness part. In witness thereof, Jacques will sign his hand and cause the seal of Apex to be affixed to this on the 5th of May, 2020.
All right, thank you. right, and our final presentation goes back to the police department, presentation of National Telecommunicator Week Proclamation, which will be read by our very own Councilman Terry Mahaffey.
Thank you, Mayor. This is National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week 2020. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical service, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Apex Communication Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are our first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them with information, ensuring their safety, and whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Apex Police Department have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, and whereas each has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job this past year. Now, therefore, our Mayor, Jacques K. Gilbert, Mayor of Town of Apex, North Carolina, declares the week of April 12th through the 18th, 2020, National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week in Apex in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism kept our town and citizens safe. We signed this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is to be noted that we are in May, but we're going back to recognize them, and we recognize them every day for the job that they do. So thank you for sharing in that reading. All right, so we'll now move to our consent agenda, and all consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of a consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any updates with the consent agenda, or do I have a motion to accept it as printed?
I make a motion to accept as is.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. We're now moved to the setting of the regular meeting agenda, and we have the agenda in front of us. Are there any changes to the agenda items that are printed?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd request that we add a closed session before the item of new business to consult with our attorney on legal matters.
Okay. All right, motion for a closed session before new business. All right, second.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion second, discussion. All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, it passed unanimously. We do have a set meeting agenda. All right, we now move to our public forum. And since we are doing this virtually now, I know there was an opportunity to submit statements or even voicemail. So Manager Drew, do you have any?
Yes, there was one public forum comment submitted by the Cognito forum, and that has been audio recorded by our intern, and Conrad from IT will play that.
This comment is from Mark Urban at 115 Worksworth Circle in Apex. I want to express concern that Apex police seem to be poorly used. These brave men and women protect this community and investigate the crimes that happen here, but I'm shocked at the number of times I see them doing speed traps, especially on state roads that are already patrolled by the State Highway Patrol. What a waste, and the additional contact during the pandemic just underscores the hazards of this activity. If this is being done because of funding needs, then that's just wrong. The police are our shield, not our piggy bank. I ask the council to consider directing the chief to reprioritize the officers toward more criminal enforcement. Thank you for your time. And as an aside, if the council is curious, I haven't gotten a ticket in 15 years.
Good to know.
All right, yes. All right, thank you very much. And that was the only comment tonight for public forum, so I'll go ahead and close public forum. We'll now move into public hearing. And only presentation is public hearing and possible motion regarding various amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance. Current Planning Manager Amanda Bunce presenting tonight.
Good evening. I hope you can see my screen that I'm sharing for the PowerPoint presentation.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, very good. So we do have these UDO amendments that went to Planning Board back in March. The first two UDO amendments came out of the Planning Committee, which met in January. And they relate to the membership of the Planning Board. Sorry, getting a bit of an echo, so I'm going to turn my mic down. Okay. So the first amendment is to increase the number of members from 8 to 9, provide new criteria for the composition of the board, add a non-voting member from the Apex Historical Society, reduce the number of terms to 2 years, increase the length of term to 2 years, increase the number of terms to 4, and remove the requirement for a public hearing when removing a planning board member. So I'm going to go through these amendments and explain them a little more. So currently the planning board consists of 8 members, and the proposal is to add 1 member who, as we'll see later, the language would say would reside within the unincorporated area of Wake County and within our planning jurisdiction, and then 1 non-voting member who would be from the Apex Historical Society. So as you can see here in B, 1 member of the planning board shall reside outside the corporate limits and ETJ, but within the area covered by the town's 2045 land use map. And then the non-voting member would be from the Apex Historical Society and may reside either within or outside of the town's corporate limits. And so the non-voting member would not, of course, would not have voting power on matters of business, but would just be able to participate in the discussion. The next change would be to reduce the number of planning board members from a majority to just change a majority to half that have special training in the area of planning, real estate development, architecture, etc. Oh, sorry about that. So the regular member of the planning board that would live within the, basically within the unincorporated area of Wake County would be recommended by the mayor and appointed by the town council, as would the non-voting member from the Apex Historical Society would be recommended by the mayor and appointed by the town council. To the term limit change, there's a proposal to reduce the length of term to 2 years and increase the number of terms to 4 years. So your total length of service would be reduced from 9 years to 8 years, excuse me. And then there's an amendment to clarify that the non-voting member is not considered as part of the quorum. And so I'll go ahead and tell you the planning board's recommendation on this item was to recommend approval, except they disagreed with the change to the length of term and the number of terms. They believe that 3 years is a good time for a length of term to allow people to become accustomed to serving on the board, become familiar with processes and rules, etc. And therefore, they recommend that the length of term remain at 3 years and the number of terms remain at 3.
Is now exiting.
Are there any questions on item number 1?
Ms. Bunce, this is Brett. Can you clarify the planning board recommendation? I read that, and was the objection more to the 3 years, 3 to 2 change, or was it more from the 8 to 9 or 9 to 8, or a combination of both?
It was really getting at the length of the term. They felt like 2 years was simply, you're just really getting going into that second year. And so they felt like the length of term should remain at 3.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on that first item?
Ms. Bunce, this is Cheryl. More maybe a comment to the planning committee. I was curious, was there a reason that you all wanted to change it? And did you all want to speak to that?
Sure.
Just help us understand.
Town council operates. The town council operates on a 2-year election cycle, so I thought aligning it with our election cycle seemed prudent. And the increase in number of terms from 3 to 4 was an attempt to address that seniority experience thing. They can still serve roughly the same amount of time. So that was bumped up to sort of try to address that concern.
And and just to follow up, this is Cheryl again. When we talk about the citizen advisory boards, there are 5 of them, I believe. Could someone just refresh what are the terms of those and how is it consistent or inconsistent with what you all are proposing?
I can.
And the environmental one is staggered. There's like 3 and 2 and 1. Or is that just because it's just set up?
Just because it was set up.
Okay, okay.
It'll take a little bit of time to go through the ordinances and find those terms.
So both of the Board of Adjustment and the Transit Committee, they both serve 3-year terms. I'm not sure about the Parks and Recreation and the Environmental Advisory Board. Those are listed in the town code, which I don't have in front of me.
So this is Nicole. I do think that's a good question that Cheryl is asking, and I guess along those lines, was the opinion unanimous? I guess from the planning board around referring 3 years.
Yes.
My recollection was that the proposal initially was to reduce it to 2 years, and then there was some discussion, and then during the course of the discussion, we agreed to raise the number of terms to 4 years to address the issue that was raised by the planning board as well. And then it was unanimously recommended at that point.
Environmental Advisory Board is 2 years.
Each term.
Correct. Once the staggering, the initial staggering is over, each additional term would be 2 years.
So it sounds like there's a mix here. It's not.
Parks and Rec is 3 years.
Yeah.
It sounds like, this is Cheryl, so it sounds like the planning board is currently 3 years, the Board of Adjustment is currently 3 years, Transit Advisory Committee is 3 years, Parks and Rec is 3 years, and the Environmental Board will be 2 years once it's more fully functioning. I'm just curious about the consistency and inconsistency. Why wouldn't we want to be consistent, and is there an argument against not being consistent?
I mean, I would ask, I don't see the benefit of being consistent. Like, it doesn't matter whether the consistency between the boards doesn't seem to affect the operation of them. They should, I mean, I would rather argue for or against this based on the reasoning, the stated reason of aligning with the election schedule and allowing a new town council to have a say quicker on the board members. The consistency doesn't bother me whether it's consistent or not. I've looked around other towns, they vary from 1 to 4 years. It's whatever they want, really.
Okay, so do we want to move on to the next item?
Everybody good?
So we're going to vote at the end at everything, I guess?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item deals with proposed compensation for the board members. of the various boards that are listed in the UDO. And the proposal is to allow these boards to serve with compensation as authorized by the town council in the annual budget. Currently, none of these boards receive any compensation. They're all volunteer. The planning board had a great deal of discussion on this item, and they ended up recommending that the council approve up to a $50 per meeting reimbursement rather than compensation. I don't know if you have any questions about that item.
This is Nicole. I have a comment, if that's okay. I am really glad that we're looking at this compensation idea. I am disappointed that we can't really do compensation because I think some of the arguments for compensation means that you actually can have greater diversity of age, perspective, different things if you can support people, because including the boards I serve on, I mean, it just tends to be a certain type of person who can maybe take time off of work or different things, be flexible, could pay for childcare, things like that, or for adult daycare, those kinds of things. So I think and also just realizing that this is, people spend a lot of time and take it very serious when they're on these types of boards. And I think doing it straight compensation is less red tape. I feel like the way we are moving towards reimbursement is more town resources, more red tape. And I think that's, not a direction I think a lot of people would prefer to go, is to put more resources into this program. It should be, and if people don't need the compensation, they can donate it back. That's my 2 cents.
If I got a question. So the Board of Adjustments, they don't meet as often as other boards, right? So with the compensation, would they just still get that compensation, or how does that work?
I believe the UDO, Mayor, the UDO proposal is that it would be per attendance.
Per attendance?
So
Okay.
you'd have to show up at the meeting, and then the
And then you
compensation
get
would be
it,
on.
okay. Just want to make sure.
Mrs. Bunce, was it just can you remind me, was it a definitional change, or was it actually, was 50 what we were going to do anyway? Or was it a number change or just a definitional change?
That was just an amount suggested by the planning board, that it be up to a $50 reimbursement. That was just what they suggested.
Okay.
And Ms. Bunce, this is Cheryl. It sounds like a reimbursement would require more paperwork and tracking down from maybe staff versus a compensation would not. Is that right?
That could be, of course, finance could speak more directly to that, but if it's for reimbursement, then what is the reimbursement for? There would need to be receipts, I would imagine, of some sort. So it seems like it would be more paperwork.
If I could jump in, I should mention the initial proposal here was for a reimbursement program. And during the discussion in the planning committee, it was actually staff who came forward and mentioned that the overhead of a reimbursement program may not be worth it, considering the amount of money we're discussing. We're talking potentially $50 a meeting per person. And I do like a stipend type system better once it was proposed, because we're not going to be able to, when writing a policy for reimbursement, anticipate any potential, what would be a reasonable use of money. So getting rid of the red tape and just making it straight, a compensation model, to me, reflecting on it, I think is a lot better. I prefer it.
I would
Yeah, and
agree.
this is-
Thank you.
Go ahead.
It's just Cheryl. I would just say I would agree with that, Mr. Mahaffey.
And this is Nicole again. I would say then you get into is a grandmother, can a relative, can you turn in a receipt for a relative's time who's having to come and take care of your children, or it has to be a babysitting service? I just think that it could get into a lot of checks and balances that don't need to be for $50.
Right.
For someone who's already spent a lot of time before they get to the meeting, preparing for the meeting.
I agree with you, Nicole. This is Audra. I think it's just, like Terry was saying earlier, there's a lot of overhead and management rather than just a straight stipend across the board.
I agree. All right, any other discussion on that item? All right, thanks, Amanda.
Okay, so the next two items are recommended by planning staff. This amendment is to add the use hotel or motel to the B1 neighborhood business zoning district and to amend the supplemental standards for the use. So as you can see, currently it's allowed in the other commercial zoning districts with the exception of neighborhood business. And currently the use standards are quite antiquated. We don't think they're necessary or really serve a purpose. But we are proposing that in the neighborhood business B1 and B2, which is downtown districts, that the following standards should apply. No more than 75 guest rooms for lodging shall be provided, and guest units shall be reached from an interior corridor. So these standards would not apply in the other commercial zoning districts. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this item.
No questions? All right, thanks, Amanda.
And finally, this is more of a cleanup item. So since we no longer take master subdivision plans through planning board and town council, the reference to planning board in this section needs to be removed. It should have been removed when we made that change in 2018, but it was missed. So the change here, other than a couple of stylistic changes, is to strike needing a recommendation for planning board for substitution of fees in lieu of public improvements. It would still be the decision of town council to make. And I can say planning board did recommend approval of both items 3 and 4 as presented by staff.
All right, any questions? All right, thanks, Amanda.
And that's it for me.
Okay. All right, any questions for Amanda before? All right. So that's last for staff to present. What I'll do now is open up a public hearing for this item. And were there any comments presented on the public hearing?
There were no comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right, no comments. Hearing that, we'll close public hearing and refer the matter to council for discussion leading to a possible motion.
Mr. Mayor, I have a few comments, and I think procedurally there's a lot here. I know there's a lot of little stuff added together. Let me just take this off here. Can I suggest that I want to comment a little bit and then make a motion to approve the balance of them, and then maybe we could have some more discussion, and if someone would like to offer an amendment, we can discuss that at that time. Be a way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to start by thanking Councilmember Gant. After my election, I had a laundry list of ideas for what I wanted to do in various things, and I didn't know how to get it done. I was trying to, you get here and, you got your ideas, you talk about a bunch of stuff, and then it comes time to actually do the work. So I'm like, okay, now what? So I sat down and I talked to the council member, and he suggested, let's have a planning committee meeting, bring all of them. I'm like, all of them? He's like, yeah, all of them. Just do it. Just run down the whole list. So I had a list that must have been like 20 things or something. We just started going through them in this committee meeting. And what you see here, the first two items, is the result of that meeting. Some of the items that I brought were left on the cutting room floor. Some items were changed through some discussion, and some were like, that's a great idea, let's just do it, without much discussion. So I do want to say, overall, my intention here with all these changes is to change the planning board to be more representative of the town that they make decisions for. So I hope as you read through them and you heard them, that you kind of try to view these changes in that lens. That was really my intention. Adding a member to the long-range planning area in particular is something that's important to me, because most of the activity in Apex happens in that long-range planning area outside of the ETJ, outside of the corporate limits. Most of the big subdivisions are happening out there. The people in that area, although they can't vote for us, they don't pay taxes to us, they're impacted a lot by that. And having one seat there for them, I think, is a very meaningful gesture towards fairness in this process. So that's important to me. The Apex Historical Society, I think, represents us showing the values that we have as a town and that our citizens have. It's a reflection of things that I've heard. It's not a voting position. It's advisory. It was intentionally done to be non-quorum, so they can just not show up if there's nothing relevant to their interest at the meeting. It literally gives them a seat at the table. It's quite the intention. So I think that's a positive change and reflects, again, our values. What else? The length of terms, again, we discussed. And what else? Corporate limits. And then the compensation issue we also had some discussion about. And again, to me, this is about opening up the board to a wider selection of people from our town who may be unable to serve or unwilling to serve if they have to take time off work or they need to get a babysitter. I don't think that should be a barrier to someone volunteering on our boards. And I already went through the history a little bit as to how we got to that point, but I think it's a good change. It's not unprecedented. Plenty of other towns do this. In terms of the amount, $50, $60, it's something we can discuss every year in the budget. We had a report from our town manager about the overall impact to our budget. It's minuscule. We're talking a couple $1,000s a year in total, given the boards that we have. And I hope it encourages more citizen participation in our system. So that's pretty much it. The other two amendments I support. It makes sense. And with that, Mayor, I'd motion to approve the 4 UDO amendments presented to us today.
Okay. All right, there's a motion to approve the 4 UDO amendments.
Clarification.
Sure.
Is that with 2-year terms or 3-year terms?
It is as presented.
Okay, so with the 3-year terms.
No, with the 2-year terms for maximum term, for maximum terms for 8 years.
Okay, and then stipend versus
Compensation, as presented.
I have clarification too, I'm sorry. I've heard the word stipend, compensation, and reimbursement. Are stipend and compensation the same and reimbursement is different?
Yes.
And so we're advocating for just a straight payment of stipend compensation?
I am.
That was presented.
That's as presented, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, as I said earlier, I would ask that we get through a motion to approve them, and then we can discuss any amendments and debate there. And if there's 3 votes to do something different, then we'll do something different.
With that presented, I'll second your motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I have a response to Councilman Mahaffey and a friendly amendment. The response is that although I may have been filled with a bit of dread and foreboding before that January meeting, it turned out pretty well. So there's that. The friendly amendment, as I've had 5 months to stew on this a little bit, I think I would like to propose that we extend the number of terms from 4 to 5, because I think there can be some institutional knowledge in years 9 and 10, although that's a long time. But I think I have a coworker who was on the Cary Planning Board, and I think he served about that long, and he was very knowledgeable about.
So 2-year terms.
2-year term,
5 terms.
but 5, so 10 years total.
I have no objection to that.
Same.
Okay.
All right, so we have that. So motion second. All right, further discussion? All right, take a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, the item passes unanimously. Thank you, Amanda. All right, we now move to unfinished business 1.
Closed session, Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry. You're right.
Next.
My fault.
Okay, that's okay. Motion to approve the resolution providing for the sale and issuance of 1.8 million general obligation Parks and Recreation Bonds Series 2020A. The resolution providing for the sale and issuance of 28 million general obligation Parks and Recreation Bonds Series 2020B, and the resolution providing for the sale and the issuance of not to exceed 3.2 million general obligation refunding bonds Series 2020, presented by Finance Director Vance Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
You're a little muffled, but we can hear you.
Before we get to the resolution, I'd like to take just a moment to give you some good news on related issues. One being that earlier today, the Local Government Commission approved our application for issuance of $1.8 million of two-thirds bonds, as well as the refunding bonds. Also earlier today, we were informed by Standard & Poor's and Moody's Investor Services that they have assigned a AAA rating, the highest rating possible, to all three of our bond issues and reaffirmed the town's AAA bond rating.
Yes.
Nice job.
Really on the leadership of the council and the managers, as well as the hard work of all the employees, not just a single department. You have before you a resolution to provide for the sale and issuance of those three bond issues we've been working on. Again, the 1.8 million two-thirds bonds, 28 million new money bonds, as well as up to $3.2 million of refunding bonds. In addition to the provisions relating to the sale and issuance bond of the bonds, the resolutions also address the form of the bonds, as well as some post-issuance procedures. One thing I do want to point out to you that is we have included language to allow me to shorten the term of the two-thirds bonds. Our financial advisors indicated that with $1.8 million of principal repayments spread over 20 years, that's only about $90,000 a year. That might make it difficult to attract a bidder for those bonds. So what they suggested is potentially shortening the maturity on the two-thirds bonds, the $1.8 million bonds, and we would blend that in with the $28 million bonds. So between those two bonds, you have a principal repayment of $1.49 million per year. That would remain constant, but a larger portion of that may be the refunding the two-thirds bonds in the early years, and that will permit us potentially, with a shorter term on that, to market it more favorably in the current debt market. Are there any questions concerning the resolution?
All right.
I have just a general question. You mentioned the local debt market. Can you give me an idea, what's your sense of how the debt market is reacting to the current climate around the world and around the country? Is it getting better or worse? Does it make no difference to us in terms of our bond sales?
Well, it certainly would make a difference, sir. I can tell you that we have had good improvement. I learned today that I believe either Wilmington or New Hanover County went out with a bond sale. They got a very good rate. They received 8 bids, which is very important. So we're anticipating, providing no huge event occurs in the next 2 weeks, that will be very successful on the 19th.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Holloman? All right. I'm hearing none. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We need a vote.
Yeah, we will. I just want to make sure you were done. Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
All right. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve, Mayor.
All right. Motion approved. Second. Discussion. All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. There's your vote, Mr. Holloman.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you so much for everything.
Council would get mad at me if I hadn't gotten that.
Yes, sir.
We're going for the 4A bond rating next year, right?
They don't have that one yet, so. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, moving along on the agenda, next item is closed session to discuss legal matter with new business 1 and then 1 additional legal matter. So do I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
All right, second. All right, discussion. All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, unanimously, we'll go into closed session.
And we will be going to training room 3A upstairs so we can properly distance.
Okay?
Thank you.
So we're not coming back here at all? Oh, to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
And actually here, new business 1 will come back here.
Okay.
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 All right.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Conrad is right here. No one can keep the building.
Okay.
Nicole, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Nicole's on mute.
Oh, I'm
on mute, because I'm on the other thing.
Yes.
Are you in closed session?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I need to know. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, Donna,
Yes, ma'am.
do you hear an echo when you talk?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a reason why I'm also not connected into the closed session?
They're upstairs and you'd have to call in. Somebody is calling them. They didn't do it through this.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. All right. Okay, so how am I going to get to hear new business if they do that upstairs?
Oh, they're going to come back down.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard Drew say they were going to do it up there.
Nope, they're going to come back down for that. We're just waiting for the closed session to end.
Okay. All right. Good deal.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, Conrad.
Yeah.
The echo's still pretty bad.
Turn it down.
All right. If I talk now, I still hear it. Okay. Hold on. Conrad?
Yeah.
Donna, you're on as well. Can you play that recording?
It'll be, it's still live, is that okay?
What's that?
Still live, is that okay? Nothing, energy projectiles.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see if they were coming back.
Is it okay to play it while it's still live on YouTube?
You could pause the YouTube. And then unpause it when they come back. That's what I used to do.
Present.
They're on the way back downstairs now.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Y'all ready? All right, we good? All right. I'd like to call the meeting back into session. We'll go with new business 1, discussion on the future use of town properties located at 320 and 322 North Mason Street and direction on the same, presented by Assistant Town Manager Marty Stone.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk to you about the use of the town properties at 320 and 322 North Mason Street tonight. .320 and 322 North Mason. So 322 North Mason is the site of the old Grocery Boy Jr. It was purchased back in September of 2017. And it was purchased because of its proximity to the Town Hall campus and the potential to use it for office space in the future. Then in August of 2019, can everybody still hear me fine? We purchased 320 North Mason, which is a residential house on that site, which opens up some flexibility for us. So 322, which is the site of the old Grocery Boy Jr., is 1.24 acres. And then we have the 320 North Mason, which is 0.45 acres, giving us a total of 1.69 acres to use. The purchase of 320 North Mason in 2019 really opened up our design possibilities of how we could use that space, because it more than doubled our road frontage along North Mason. So you have to think about, when we first bought it, we were trying to figure out how to use this site within the area of the 1.24 in the crosshatch was not part of it. So that really, you were basically building, but you were building into back off the lot and into the depth. So it was a little bit of a different type arrangement. So if you're looking at the site, this is standing in the community center parking lot extension, and 320 is located to your right. That is a residence there. That house was, when we bought that lot, it was bought with the intention to demolish that house when we bought it. It was never intended to be used by the town. And I'll give you some more data on the actual structure here in a minute. To the left is 322 North Mason. That is the site of the old Grocery Boy Jr. And I show you because now you can see all the road frontage that we have available with the use of both lots. That we could look at when looking at how to use this for future use for the town, the most effective use of it. We can now look at some different designs. What we have to consider is, we know we're going to get rid of the residential house, but the actual old Grocery Boy Jr., there is the potential to possibly renovate it and add new space to it, or the possibility of just taking that structure down altogether, removing it, and starting with a clean slate and a clean design. And we'll talk about a couple other things here that may impact your decision-making there. This is standing on North Mason Street, opposite side of the street of the community center, looking back toward Center Street, if you will, Chatham. And on this site, basically, one of the things to just point out is the building is very close to the road, so it's within the setbacks. It's less than 25 feet, if you will, to the right of way, and that's not good. This is just another picture from standing in the parking lot of the old Grocery Boy Jr. You can see that it is just a basic structure. It is nothing on the inside of the structure except for, it's just vacant. There's nothing inside at all. It's totally gutted out inside the structure at this time. It does have a decent roof and at this time. But that structure was built in 1975. It's approximately 2,950 square feet. It's a slab on grade with masonry walls and a wood truss roof structure. So it has low ceilings. They're approximately 8 feet tall inside the building. That's not ideal for office space, okay? It has uninsulated windows, it has uninsulated walls, and it has a limited natural lighting. Again, it was a convenience store, so you have windows only on 2 sides, and 2 sides have none. If y'all don't mind, I got to get rid of this. I'm socially safe from y'all right now. So existing house on 320 North Mason was built in 1948. It's approximately 1,110 square feet. It's a residential construction, and it has a masonry veneer exterior, which means basically you can't really move it very well because time you take all the brick off, that's not that large of a structure. It's not really worth the cost to move. And there may be other abatement issues given the time and the paint that may be used in the structure. So what we're looking at is the potential advantages to raising the existing structures, both on 320 and 322. And why would we do that? Well, a new building could be designed in keeping with Apex's established architectural language and scale and appearance, meeting its design requirements for both Section 6.3 of the Small Character Overlay District and Article 9 of the Design Standards without the need for any exceptions. If you recall, I already pointed out one exception would be it's within the setback. A second one would be the actual exterior and the appearance of the building itself would not fit in the Small Town Character Overlay District. The building will have a more consistent thermal envelope. At the end of the day, it's going to be more energy efficient, right? This building is not, in 1975, was not the most energy efficient time construction period to start with, but convenience stores in themselves were not very efficient buildings, and they didn't need to be because they had lots of equipment running inside of them that kept them very warm anyway, right? So they weren't built to be an energy efficient office space. The ceilings will not be restricted to 8 feet or less in various portions of the building. If we were to build a new building, we would have taller ceilings, particularly in the open meeting space. That was one of the things that kind of first called this out to our attention was looking at the meeting space for the building in a conference room, and it had the ceilings were just barely at 8 feet. So that's it can be done, but it feels very constricted at that point. And then the overall construction would be of a higher quality over the life of the building if it would start and basically be a clean slate for the designer. Right now, the layout was basically everything built away from the road. It wasn't built along the road. Now, lots of things have happened. We bought 320, which allows us to now maybe have the facade along the front of Mason and have it facing. There's a potential that you could even put inline horizontal street parking in if you did it that way, so you could have street parking in the front, and then they could come in off of Mason directly into the front of the building instead of having your main entrance on the side. It just gives you some options. Not that we cannot use it as a renovation project, I'm just not sure that that meets the peak standards, if you will, if you want to look at appearance. So what we're looking at is staff needs direction from council on how we want to proceed with these properties to serve the public most effectively. And once we know how you want to proceed, then we will proceed with our consultant to complete a design for office space that will be efficient and effective to serve the citizens.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions?
I actually have one question.
Yes, sir.
At what point in this project would the surrounding neighbors be consulted about the potential direction we're going in to give their input or made aware of what's happening by them? The townhome owners, I know, behind it, for example.
I am not sure of that question. It would fall in, well, the zoning's already changed on this lot, is it not?
Yeah, that's correct. So we by right can do this. We have had conversations with the lady that bought the lot to the south of this and built those two houses. Several conversations, especially when we bought that smaller house next to her houses, and we assured her during that we would do everything we can to be sure that there's a good buffer between our property and her houses, and she'd been very easy to work with. We would certainly, the signs will go up, boards will go up. If the council would like, we can mail out things once we have a design. We can mail something out to the homeowners association of the townhomes and to the adjacent neighbors, as saying this is what's coming soon to a neighborhood near you.
One of the things that the consultant said back in May of 2019, when they were looking at the renovation option only, because we did not own the other property, so we were going to look at moving forward that way, was the lot of this was a lot of expense was going to be paid on the building, trying to make it fit in to the small town character overlay. So even the roof on the building, which is fairly new, is going to be all but destroyed to make it tie into anything new, to any addition that's added to it. You're essentially getting some walls at the end of the day.
And the ability to be able to start, if that's the council's direction, start with a blank canvas. We'll end up being able to deliver something that's much more fitting to the neighborhood. And not that we wouldn't if we renovated and did an addition, it's just much easier to fit something in that looks better long-term.
Sounds like it can be more efficiently utilized with having the two properties, starting from scratch.
And I would just add, I was looking at our strategic goals, and that would fit with environmental leadership and responsible development too, that we have said is so important.
Yeah, I concur. I think, given what you just said about the current state of the building and some of its properties, it seems like a clean slate is the best thing to do in the year 2020. Just reiterate my concern for the neighbors and the concerns they're probably going to have around their buffer and the trees they have currently there. I think it's too early for those discussions, but keep that in mind as we start going down this road.
I just want to say, want to make sure it's a place where our staff can really, work well in, and is that, they're as comfortable as possible in getting the job done. So whatever things we need to do to make that happen, I'm for.
Need a motion?
Need a motion?
Yes, please.
I would move that we move forward with a clean slate for the project and look at taking down the two existing buildings.
I second that.
All right, motion second. Discussion?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just chime in and say I think it's always appealing to try to reuse buildings, but in this case, it doesn't make very much sense. I think intrinsically, the plan initially was to try to use it, I think was a good one, but I think we've learned some pros that outweigh that benefit.
Yeah, and once we had that second building, like the opportunity there, it's too much to pass up.
This is Nicole. I agree with what's been said already. So.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. And before you go, sir, on behalf of the council, I just want to say to The Rock, happy birthday, sir. Yes, sir. All right, looking at the agenda, no closed session, no work session. Any other discussion before we adjourn? All right, that being said, we are adjourned. Thank you.